Lucas Bennett is only 12 years old, but his mind shines with a genius that few can understand. One day, he decides to challenge the impossible and appears without warning in Nathaniel McCallum's office, one of the most powerful and rich men in the world, with a simple phrase, "I'm here for the interview." What seemed to be any morning for McCallum soon turns into something he never imagined. It was a warm autumn morning in New York, and Nathaniel McCallum's office, one of the richest and most powerful men in the country, was silent as usual. The floor where he stayed was the highest of an imposing skyscraper, with stunning views of the city. However, that day, something unusual was about to happen. Nathaniel McCallum, a 45-year-old man, a technology industry, had become known not only for his wealth, but for the enigmatic way in which he drove business. He was a man of few words, focused on results and always demanding. When a new employee or job candidate came to him, expectations were high. He was famous for choosing the finger the most brilliant, but also for his coldness and difficulty showing affection or empathy. On the morning of the event that would change his life, he was in his meeting room, waiting for the next interview. It was a normal day, or at least it was for Nathaniel. He did not know that the routine of that office would be interrupted by a small 12-year-old boy, a little boy who would perform unexpectedly, without invitation, and without warning. The building elevator slid to the 45th floor. The door opened with a soft ding, and to the surprise of all who were on the floor, a 12-year-old boy entered the entrance hall. He wore a simple, long-sleeved shirt and pants that seemed to be a larger number, which gave him an even younger look. In his hands, he carried a simple-looking folder with a label that said, "Interview." He walked with impressive confidence to someone his age, as if he knew exactly where he was going. The security, confused, blocked his passage. "Hey boy, are you lost?" he asked, looking with skepticism to the boy. "No, sir. I have an interview with Mr. Nathaniel McCallum," said the little boy with a calm and firm voice without wavering. He looked at the security guard, who at first did not believe his words. "Interview? With this boy?" The security guard spoke with a tone of doubt, but before he could do anything else, the little boy showed a piece of crumpled paper that he took from the folder. It was an invitation to an interview, but in an unusual way. A simple piece of paper with the words, "Interview with McCallum, today," written with an impressively formal handwriting for such a young child. The security guard was silent for a moment. He could not allow the boy to rise without any verification, but something in the boy's eyes seemed so serious that he hesitated. "I'll have to confirm, boy," said the security guard. "Stay here." With a trusted look and a discreet smile, the little boy did not protest. He waited patiently as the security guard called the reception, and to everyone's surprise, the confirmation was given. The boy was allowed to climb. As the elevator slowly descended to the 45th floor, the boy watched the lights reflecting on the metal wall. His name was Lucas Bennett, and his story was even more unusual than anyone could imagine. Lucas was a prodigy. From the age of 5, "I have solved advanced mathematical problems, wrote computer codes with a frightening ease, and demonstrated unmatched intelligence." His life had been full of challenges, as his rare ability was driving him away from his age. He was excluded and misunderstood by the majority, but it never prevented him from continuing his incessant search for knowledge. He had heard of Mr. McCallum through a video about technological innovations that the Millionaire had released years earlier. Lucas, then only 11, watched the video and was taken over a bold idea. If anyone could change the future with technology, that one was Nathaniel McCallum, and Lucas knew he had the ability to impress him uniquely. In the office, Lucas approached the meeting room where McCallum was waiting for him, still not knowing who he really was. Upon entering, he found the man sitting at the table, looking at a report with a cold, distant expression. McCallum raised his eyes, surprised, seeing the little boy standing before him. "Are you the candidate?" asked McCallum with an erected eyebrow. He looked at the boy skeptically, more curious than convinced. "Yes, I'm Lucas Bennett. I'm here for the interview." The boy spoke with calm that seemed disproportionate to the situation. Nathaniel studied the boy for a moment, suspicious, but there was something in his eyes that aroused an unexpected interest. McCallum leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Let's see what you have to show," he said, more out of provocation than for genuine interest. Lucas did not hesitate. He opened his folder and removed a series of papers in a state of the art portable screen, which he called with the speed of a professional. In a matter of minutes, he began to show McCallum a number of complex calculations and algorithms he had developed himself. Advanced artificial intelligence models that could revolutionize industry, solutions to apparently insoluble technological problems. Nathaniel, initially suspicious, began to be interested in the complexity of the boy's ideas. Each line of code was more impressive than the previous one, and the millionaire could not hide his surprise. "Did you do it yourself?" McCallum asked, the voice now more serious, impressed by the level of sophistication Lucas demonstrated. "Yes, sir. And that's just the beginning," Lucas responded with a shy but confident smile. Nathaniel McCallum watched Lucas with an intense look, as if trying to decipher the riddle in front of him. The boy, in his simple clothes and imprisonable posture, didn't seem to care about the luxury of the environment. McCallum, in his impeccable elegance and years of experience in the business world, had never been challenged in this way. He leaned forward with a slight smile of curiosity. "You know you're in one of the most important offices in the world, right? This is not how you usually start an interview." Lucas, without hesitation, looked into McCallum's eyes and responded with an impressive calm for his age. "I know, sir. But believe me, I just need a chance. I didn't come here to be hired. I came to show that I can change the game, and that you can change too." McCallum arched an eyebrow, more surprised by the answer than with the boy himself. What he was hearing was something he never expected from a child. A focused thought, a vision of the future, as if he already knew that life was not just about luck, but about enjoying the right moment. McCallum was silent, reflecting on Luke's words. Meanwhile, Lucas settled at the table without nervousness. He seemed to have a presence that surpassed his age. The place, with its white marble, modern design furniture and huge windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, did not seem to impress him. For him, none of that mattered. He was not there to admire the view or luxury, but to prove something much bigger. "So, Lucas, what are you proposing exactly?" McCallum asked, now genuinely curious. The boy began to explain, with clarity that challenged his youth. He talked about new technological possibilities, artificial intelligence capable of improving education, health, and even finances. He had plans and ideas that seemed exits from a distant future, but his reasoning was so logical and well-grounded that McCallum was forced to pay attention. "What you were saying is," McCallum began, stopping by realizing that his words would not be enough to describe what he felt. "Do you really think you can revolutionize the world with it?" Lucas looked at the millionaire with a slight smile, as if the answer were obvious. "It's not a matter of finding, sir. It is a matter of doing." McCallum felt a wave of admiration mixed with perplexity. He was beginning to understand that this boy had something that even the best executives in the world did not have. Vision. Do you want me to help you?" McCallum asked, trying to understand what Lucas was suggesting. It was a bold proposal, something that was not seen every day. The boy asked for nothing but a chance, a space to show what he could do. Lucas shook his head negatively, looking almost impatient with the question. "I don't need help, sir. What I need is someone who has the courage to believe even for just a moment that a child like me can do more than any adult could imagine. The world is changing quickly, and people like you who already have everything sometimes forget to look at others. I came here to show that it is often the little ones who make the biggest difference." McCallum was silent, pondering Luke's words. How could a 12-year-old without any significant life experience understand something he, with all his experience, had not yet fully understood? The atmosphere was more tense now, but there was also something else. Something McCallum could not identify, but made him even more attentive to what Lucas had to say. He decided to hear more out of curiosity than for anything else. "Continue," he said finally, encouraging the boy to deepen his plans more. He wanted to see how far this boy could go, and somehow he felt that he was about to witness something historical. Lucas did not hesitate. He began to detail every aspect of his vision, designing graphics, algorithms, and complex solutions in the McCallum system with impressive ease. He spoke with the confidence of an adult, but his passion was undeniably from a child who still dreamed of great. "Education will be the key, sir. If we can teach children to think critically, to use technology to create, not just consume, we can change the future of any country. And this is not something we can expect for the next 10 or 20 years. We need to act now." McCallum was gaping. He could see the passion in Lucas's eyes, and that was beginning to make more sense than any financial spreadsheet he had ever analyzed. It was not money or power, but something deeper, a mission, perhaps, an idea capable of changing the course of the story. But what most impressed McCallum was not just the brilliant content of Lucas's ideas. It was the way the boy, so young, knew what he wanted, and, most importantly, knew how to communicate it. As the day advanced, the conversation between McCallum and Lucas became more intense. The millionaire, still in shock with the depth of the boy's intelligence, tried to maintain the focus. Increasingly, he was uncomfortable with the growing feeling that his limited view could be preventing him from seeing something truly revolutionary. But something at the bottom of his mind wouldn't fail to question him. Was he really ready to risk everything for an idea coming from a boy? After hours of presentation, McCallum decided to interrupt. "This is all impressive, Lucas, but you understand what that means in the real world. Implementation, complications. It's not just about having a brilliant idea. It takes much more than that to turn something like this into something tangible." Lucas did not lose his calm. "I understand, sir. And I know it will be difficult, but that's precisely why I'm here. I don't expect you to believe me without any more. I just want a chance, an opportunity to prove that I can make a difference." McCallum took a deep breath and, for the first time, allowed himself to reflect on the boy's words. He was starting to realize that he may be more than just a genius child in front of him. Maybe Lucas was the key to something much bigger than he could imagine. But the doubts were still there. The pressure of being the leader of a financial empire weighed on McCallum. He knew that if he made the wrong decision, he could lose much more than money. He could lose his reputation, his legacy, and his own control over the future. "You're asking a lot, Lucas. It is not simple to invest in something so uncertain. Even though your ideas are brilliant, there is no guarantee of success. And what you are proposing changes not only the market, but the whole society." Lucas was not intimidated. Instead, he seemed to deepen even more in the conversation. The greatest innovations always came from something that seemed impossible. If you look at the biggest names in history, you will see that they all faced resistance at first. It's not just about money, it's about vision. I believe you have that too. You just need to believe me. McCallum looked at the boy, reflecting on his words. He felt a growing tension within him. The boy was right, but he also knew that trusting someone so young without any history of success was a huge risk. What made him more restless was that somewhere inside him, McCallum felt that there was more than just a brightness of intelligence in Luke's eyes. There was a genuine passion, a desire to change the world he didn't see in many of the adults around him. As the conversation unfolded, McCallum's phone rang. He answered, momentarily interrupting the discussion. "McCallum." Her voice was tense, her mind still in the conversation with Lucas. Across the line, the voice of his assistant was urgent. "Mr. McCallum, you need to see this. We have a potential crisis. One of our companies is being investigated for doubtful practices. The details are still inaccurate, but the implications can be serious." McCallum was silent for a moment, feeling the weight of the words. A crisis. It was exactly what he didn't need at that moment. But at the same time, the news made him reflect on something. He had the power, the resources, the network of contacts, but he still felt that something was missing. He wanted to do more. "I wanted to transform something deep and significant, but I still didn't know how." He looked at Lucas, who was there, patiently waiting, without haste, without demands. "Can you help me with that, Lucas?" McCallum asked without thinking. It was a strange request, but the situation led him to seek something more than the conventional one. He needed a solution, but he also felt that this boy could be the key to finding an unexpected way. Lucas looked at him seriously, analyzing the question. "I can, but only if you really want to change, if you believe you can do that. I'm not asking for any chance, Mr. McCallum. I am asking to transform the future." McCallum knew that this was more than a simple business conversation. The boy was not just asking for an opportunity, he was proposing a revolution. "So let's do that, Lucas. Let's transform the future," McCallum said, more like a statement than a question. He felt for the first time in a long time that something big was about to happen. But what he did not know was that in his search for a solution to his corporate crisis, he was about to be challenged not only by the future, but also by his own principles. The tension was growing up. McCallum's future and Lucas's were now irrevocably intertwined, and what had begun as an unusual interview was about to become an unexpected journey where the twists were just beginning. While McCallum and Lucas began an unexpected path together, other forces began to move behind the scenes. The business world, where McCallum reigned sovereign, was full of ambitions, envy, and power games. The crisis he had received over the phone was just the tip of the iceberg of a much more complex situation. However, the millionaire could not ignore Luke's brightness, nor the way his words had touched something deep inside him. He was willing to see how far this partnership with the boy could take him. In the following weeks, McCallum made a point of joining Lucas in discussions about the corporate crisis. Meanwhile, the boy, with his unique vision and ability to absorb and process information impressively, has begun to make innovative suggestions on how to reverse the situation. Lucas helped develop strategies but always kept the focus on what he considered to be the true mission: to use technology to make society more significantly. While working at McCallum's office advanced, Lucas began to strengthen his ties with the team. He did not see himself as a protected or prodigy boy, but as someone who had a crucial role to play. His way of acting, calm and focused, began to inspire others around him, even those who initially doubted him. But Lucas also knew he was not just there to save McCallum or his company. He was there for something much bigger. However, in the world of McCallum, things were not always so simple. While the millionaire was beginning to put his confidence in Luke, some of his former alliances began to wonder about the growing influence of the boy. Among them was David Bradford, one of McCallum's main executives. David, who was always a pragmatic man and for many the true brain behind the McCallum empire, began to feel that the boy was taking a lot of space. He felt that Luke's invasion in his sphere of influence was destabilizing the company and the dynamics of power he had dominated for years. David was not someone who easily accepted to be challenged, especially by a child. He began to investigate Lucas, trying to find out more about him. Who was that boy? How had he managed to conquer McCallum so quickly? And most importantly, was he really qualified to influence the crucial decisions of a company that moved billions? In an internal meeting, David made the decision to confront McCallum about Lucas. He knew that deep down the millionaire was delighted with the boy's genius, but David could not allow this to irreversibly affect business. "Nathaniel, I need to talk about Lucas," David said, with a serious and straightforward tone. "I understand that the boy is brilliant, but he has no experience that this company needs. You are putting a lot of power in the hands of someone who doesn't even know how the business world really works. What he is proposing may be good, but we have no guarantee of success." McCallum looked at him calmly before answering. "I know what you're saying, David. But sometimes the experience blinds people to new possibilities. Lucas made me see things I never imagined. I know it's not a small risk, but I'm willing to give it a chance." David frowned, but realized that he could not change the minds of McCallum easily. Deep down, he also knew that McCallum has always been an impulsive man, and that as much as he tried to control situations, he often was carried away by his intuition. "Okay," said David, still suspicious, "but don't blame me if it ends up in a disaster." While McCallum dealt with internal issues, Lucas focused on his own battles. He knew he was messing with something big, something that could change everything. But he also knew the challenges would be huge. The pressure to deliver innovative solutions weighed on it, and despite his confidence in his own work, Lucas felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He wanted to prove that his vision was more than just a dream, which was real and possible. But for that, he needed people to believe him, which was not always easy. It was a moment of transition. McCallum was experiencing a personal and professional crisis, while Lucas, even though he was a child, was facing a unique opportunity to change the future. The subtrums were all connected, with the boy in the center of a web of tensions, challenges, and discoveries. Every step that took place seemed to generate a reaction that could strengthen his position and put everything at risk. Meanwhile, David did not give up observing. He knew that if something wrong happened, he would be the first to blame McCallum and Lucas for a possible fall. But for now, the game was just starting. The tension that hovered over Nathaniel McCallum's office was reaching his peak. The work with Lucas was advancing, but new complications also emerged, both inside and outside the company. McCallum and the boy had started working together on a revolutionary artificial intelligence project, but the corporate environment was becoming increasingly hostile. David Bradford, suspicious and determined to maintain his control over the company, was squeezing McCallum with each meeting. That day, however, the turn would not come from inside the company, but something external, something unexpected that would change everything. Lucas, who had hitherto impressed everyone with his vision, was in a video conferencing with some of the industry's largest investors and technicians. McCallum, with his experience, knew that this was the crucial time to convince investors that Luke's proposal was valid. But something went wrong. During the presentation, a critical failure in the transmission system made the graphics and models of Lucas appear corrupted. The screen froze for a few seconds, and when it came back, the essential code for the explanation was in an unintelligible mess. The room was silent. McCallum's face was tense, and he felt the weight of the pressure on his shoulders. He looked at Lucas, who was calmly before the computer, but his eyes were fixed on the screen, watching the catastrophe happening. He knew that was the chance of his life, and he could not allow everything to be destroyed by a technical failure. "What happened?" McCallum asked, trying to keep calm. Lucas looked at him, as if it weren't for the kind of person who would be shaken by a mistake. He pressed some buttons and in an instant reconfigured the system, but the damage was already done. The time that was lost could not be recovered. Investors in the call began asking uncomfortable questions, pressing McCallum and Lucas. "This is not the confidence we're looking for. It seems that we are dealing with an unstable system. The confidence you are asking is not viable." That's when the turnaround happened. David Bradford entered the room with his face serious as usual. But this time, there was something different. He approached McCallum, lowering his voice. "I warned Nathaniel. You have put your trust in a boy, and this is now costly. What are we going to do? The crisis in the company only gets worse, and you get involved in something you don't know how to control. I already suggested that we stopped with it before it is too late." McCallum felt a mixture of frustration and impotence. He knew David was trying to minor him, but he also knew that the risk he had taken with Luke was huge, and now the consequences were before him. It was at this moment that Luke, calm and composed, got up. He didn't say a word. He simply turned off the video conferencing system and then looked straight at McCallum. "I'll fix it," Lucas said, with the same serenity that characterized him. McCallum and David were silent, not knowing what to expect. Everyone was nervous, but Lucas seemed to be in complete peace with what he was about to do. He sat in front of the computer again, his fixed gaze on the screen, and in a few seconds reprised the video conferencing systems. What seemed lost was recovered with impressive speed. The code returned to normal, the charts aligned, and when the video conferencing was reestablished, the investors were silent. But what happened next was something no one expected. Investors, once skeptical and suspicious, began to be enthusiastic about Lucas's clarity and confidence. They were impressed not only with the recovery of the system, but with the way Luke had controlled the situation, showing a competence that transcended age. They started asking more detailed questions, now with a genuine interest. The boy was so ahead of his time that he no longer looked like a risk but a promise. David, who watched the scene, became increasingly uncomfortable. He couldn't understand how young someone so easily managed to master such a delicate situation. The tension was in the air, but something inside McCallum turned. He looked at Lucas, who, without saying a word, just solved the problems in his own way. When the video conferencing ended and investors gave a positive response, McCallum looked at David. "I was right, David. The future is no longer in the hands of those who have the most experience. The future is in the hands of those who can see beyond what the eyes can see." Lucas just showed us this. David didn't answer. The silence between them was heavy. McCallum knew that he had just made the most important decision of his life, and that from that moment, nothing would be more like before. The business world was about to be redefined. But the true impact of the turnaround point was not just the success of Luke in that video conferencing. It was in the fact that McCallum had changed. He now believed with all heart that true innovation did not come from experience, but of the courage to think differently, to embrace the unexpected, and to challenge the established norms. And Lucas, with his brilliant view, had just proved that the impossible was within his reach. The day after the video conferencing was a whirlwind of reactions. The crisis that McCallum feared had been temporarily circumvented, but the true consequence of everything that had happened was just beginning to unfold. Lucas, with his undisturbed calm, had gained more than investors' confidence. He had gained the respect of all around, including that of McCallum. However, the impact of this victory for McCallum was not immediate. He knew that would not be the end, but only the beginning. Which seemed to be a simple demonstration of ability on the part of Lucas became something deeper with each passing minute. The boy was unintentionally shaken the structures of everything McCallum believed to be essential to success in the business world. In the office, David Bradford's reaction was silent but no less significant. He watched McCallum from afar, evaluating every movement the millionaire made. David always believed that the empire that McCallum had built was in his hands. He was not just a subordinate, he was the brain, the strategist. Luke's arrival threatened his control over everything, and he knew that the boy was not only a threat to his position, but also to his own beliefs about what really mattered in the corporate world. David decided to act. He knew McCallum was in love with the idea of innovation Lucas represented, but he also knew he needed to discredit the boy in some way, to ensure that company control continued under his leadership. He had a plan, but he knew he would have to be careful. He could not act hastily, as this could end up moving away McCallum forever. He needed a strategic movement, something that exposed Lucas in a way that it was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Lucas was immersed in his own adaptation process. Although he had gained a big step, he knew he had not yet gained the total confidence of everyone around him. The journey was far from easy, and he also felt that the challenges were just beginning. It was not just about showing its genius to McCallum or investors. He knew that deep down, people were waiting for something more, a genuine transformation, something that was beyond technological promises. At a meeting with McCallum, Lucas spoke about his next steps. He knew that for his plan to materialize, he would have to create something that was more than just a technological tool. He wanted to create a movement. He wanted to inspire young people around the world to think differently, to use technology not to consume, but to create. "What do you have in mind, Lucas?" asked McCallum, impressed with the boy's view. He had seen a lot throughout his career, but nothing made him feel that he was on the right track like Lucas's words. "I want to create a collaborative learning network, where children and adolescents can learn to program, create, and build without worrying about financial limitations. I want them to be able to think critically and creatively without the barriers that have always existed. Imagine a world where any child, regardless of where it is born, can have access to tools that help you innovate." McCallum was silent for a moment, absorbing Luke's words. He knew that this vision was not just bold, she was transformative. However, he also knew that the way would be long and full of obstacles. But something inside him, something that had been asleep for a long time, was awakened. He knew that if it was ahead with it, the business world and society as a whole would be changing forever. But at that moment, a new reaction emerged. McCallum's phone rang again. He answered without much expectation, but soon his expression changed. What he heard on the other end of the line made his stomach turn. David Bradford had leaked confidential information from the company to the press, using a technical problem of the video conferencing to create a narrative that Lucas's solution was just a proof-of-concept failure, and that the project was condemned to fail before it even started. It was a bold and dangerous play, but not unexpected. McCallum knew he couldn't let it happen. His empire was at risk, and he could not allow anyone to compromise his vision. "Lucas, we need to act fast," McCallum said, more serious than ever. "David is trying to undermine everything you built here. He is manipulating the situation and trying to destroy his credibility. We need to prevent this." Lucas looked at McCallum with a renewed determination, as if he already knew what he needed to do. He was not surprised, but he was not willing to back down either. He knew that if he wanted to change the world, he would have to face more than just the resistance of others. He would have to face the battle for his own legitimacy. "Let's show the world what we are able to do," Lucas answered with a reliable smile. And so, while the world around them was starting to crumble, McCallum and Lucas knew that his fight was just beginning. The battle would be no longer just about business or technology. It would be a battle for truth, innovation, and the ability to transform the impossible into reality. After the information was leaked, the tension in McCallum's office intensified. David Bradford, with his treacherous play, had put the company in a delicate situation. The leak generated a series of media stories that questioned the validity of Lucas's ideas and the project they were developing. McCallum's empire was being shaken, and the trust of investors and employees was beginning to falter. But McCallum and Lucas were not the type that retreated in the face of adversity. They knew that the battle for the legitimacy of the project would be hard, But now, more than ever, it was time to prove that they were right. What was at stake was not just a technological innovation project, it was the very essence of what McCallum believed to be possible. During the early days after leakage, McCallum was immersed in endless meetings with lawyers, journalists, and crisis specialists. Legal issues began to arise, but what worked was not the legal threats. It was the questions that began to arise in his own mind. Had he been wrong to rely so blindly on Lucas? Was this boy really ready to transform the future? Or were they simply being victims of a big dream? Lucas, however, did not share these doubts. He was more determined than ever, proving his value, not only for McCallum, but to the world. He knew that the only way was to show that his ideas were solid, and that his vision was more than just a beautiful theory. He didn't just want to gain McCallum's confidence, he wanted to gain the confidence of the people who were watching, all who doubted him and all he represented. Instead of letting himself down by pressure, Lucas devoted himself to intensifying his work. He dived even deeper into his research, and with the help of some members of the McCallum team who still trusted him, he developed an enhanced version of his project. This new version was not only more stable and efficient, but it also brought new elements that, according to him, could really change the way children and adolescents around the world learned. Lucas knew the answer was in the children. He always believed they were more than just a passive generation waiting to be shaped. They had infinite creative potential, which was simply not explored by traditional educational structures. He wanted to change that, and now it was time to make it happen. Lucas asked a meeting with McCallum to present the final version of his project. The boy, with his unshakable confidence, knew that this would be his last chance to prove that he was right. He prepared the presentation with the greatest care, certain that this would be the watershed. It would no longer be about convincing investors. It would no longer be about proving everyone that he was right. He was more focused on a major goal, to make McCallum believe in him again. McCallum, in turn, was exhausted. The meetings, the internal fights, the scandal generated by David's betrayal, all he wanted most was something that could restore faith in the future. He knew the weather was against him. But when he looked at Lucas, he still saw something in his eyes he had never seen in any other employee, not even the most experienced people he had ever worked with. It was something genuine, a glow that could not be ignored. At the meeting, Lucas began to present his new version of the project. He wasted no time with complicated introductions or technical explanations. He simply showed what he had done, a collaborative, safe, and affordable learning platform that not only used artificial intelligence to teach, but also integrated real-time feedback, giving children a personalized and unprecedented learning experience. When he finished, there was a silence in the air. McCallum, despite his experience and skepticism, could not fail to feel a wave of admiration for the boy. What he was seeing there was no longer just a prototype. It was something much bigger. He saw the real impact this technology could have on society, and understood that Lucas was not simply creating a tool, he was creating a revolution. "Lucas, this is brilliant," McCallum finally said, his severe voice. "I was skeptical. I confess that I doubted what you were trying to achieve, but you did it. You not only made me see what was possible, but now you made me believe we can change the world." Lucas smiled modestly, but his confidence transparent. He knew that this moment was more than just personal validation. It was the answer to all the doubts and challenges he faced, both internally and externally. "I don't want this to be about me, Mr. McCallum. I want this to be about what people can do when they have the right tools. I want to give children the chance to create their future." McCallum was silent, deeply reflecting on Luke's words. He knew this journey would not be easy. There were many obstacles ahead, both inside and outside the company. But for the first time in a long time, he felt he was on the right track. He felt that next to Lucas, he was not just dealing with a corporate crisis. He was dealing with a revolution, something that could, in fact, change the way people saw the world. But while McCallum and Lucas prepared to face the challenges that were yet to come, there was something more that needed to be resolved: the issue of David Bradford. His blow had been accurate, and McCallum knew he couldn't let it go unpunished. But for now, the focus was on something else, in the future. And with Lucas by his side, McCallum felt that nothing would be impossible. With the final version of the project in hand and McCallum's renewed support, Lucas felt more confident than ever. But despite his brilliant view and all the hard work he and McCallum had done, there was still something to be resolved before the project could take off. David Bradford, the man who had betrayed McCallum and tried to undermine confidence in Luke, would not be easily defeated. He was still in the shadows, manipulating information and trying to turn the game against them. McCallum knew that the only way to really move on with the project was to ensure that David was neutralized, but he didn't want to get into an open war. The empire he had built was vulnerable, and any wrong movement could mean the end of everything he had achieved. On a silent night after another tense meeting, McCallum and Lucas sat in his office, analyzing the next steps. "Lucas, I think we got to the point where we can no longer wait. We need to cast this into the world. But before we do this, we need to eliminate any threat that still exists in here, especially in relation to David," said McCallum, his serious tone reflecting the seriousness of the situation. Lucas nodded, with concentrated expression. "I know, Mr. McCallum, but we need to do this intelligently. We can't let him win us playing the same game. He thinks he has control, but the real key to win is not to follow his rules." McCallum looked at the boy, surprised at the clarity with which he thought. He had undoubtedly become more than just a prodigy boy. Lucas was now a valuable partner, someone who, even in his youth, seemed to understand the complexities of corporate power and politics. McCallum knew that largely, victory would depend on its ability to act with cunning. They decided to create a strategy to deal with David, without confronting it directly. McCallum knew that David still had allies within the company, influential people who could help undermine any McCallum movement. The solution would be simple but effective. Lucas, with his technological ability, would help to obtain concrete evidence of David's actions, exposing his betrayals and sabotage without having a direct accusation. Lucas was assigned to explore the company's internal systems, finding the tracks that could incriminate David irrefutably. He knew he couldn't do this alone, and asked some trusted colleagues to be in tune with the project's view. The night fell, and while the rest of the office was empty, Lucas and his small team began to navigate the systems and data, looking for any information that could prove David's dirty maneuvers. McCallum, in turn, started working with lawyers and accountants to prepare the company for the great launch of the project. He knew that once the project was revealed to the world, there would be no return. Everyone's focus would be on the social impact that Lucas's platform could have, not the company's internal scandal. But he also knew that without neutralizing David, the company would still be vulnerable to inside attacks. A few hours passed until Lucas found the race they were looking for, a series of emails compromising David, where he was manipulating financial data to destabilize the company and sabotage McCallum's own project. Not only had he tried to discredit Lucas, but was also trying to manipulate the market so that the company faced an even greater crisis. When Lucas handed the test to McCallum, the millionaire felt a relief, mixed with a sense of loss. He always trusted David, and the betrayal of the man who once considered a friend seemed to have torn an important piece of his story. But at the same time, McCallum knew that this betrayal now gave them the power to act. "It's time to take the next step," McCallum said firmly. "Let's expose David once and for all. We can no longer live with this shadow hanging over us." Lucas didn't need to say anything. He knew what was at stake, and was prepared for what would come. He knew this step would not be easy, but he also knew they were stronger now. Together, when the pieces finally fall in place, their journey, and the impact of Lucas's project, would finally be realized. The future was within reach of their hands, but what they were about to face would be a definitive test of their strength and determination. McCallum and Lucas were ready. It was time to face the final challenge. The climax was near. They had prepared for everything, but there was still an important question to be resolved. The only question left was, would they be able to win, or would all this be lost in the face of the strength of such a deep betrayal? The moment McCallum and Lucas were waiting had arrived. The final battle was about to be fought, but not in the open field of violence or direct confrontation. The real confrontation would be in the world of ideas, strategy, and most importantly, of credibility. Everything they had built was at risk, but it was also the point of transformation, where the future would be decided. McCallum had decided that the only way to deal with David's betrayal was to expose him publicly. They would not act in the shadows or sneaky. It would be a direct confrontation where the evidence would be placed in the sight of everyone, with no room for denials. They had gathered everything they needed: David's emails, their fraudulent financial calculations, and their attempt to sabotage the project. The blow would be accurate, impactful, and definitive. On the morning of the project's official launch, McCallum summoned an emergency meeting with its main investors, executives, and press members. They were there to see the future being revealed. But before that, McCallum had something more important to share. What no one knew was that the presentation of Lucas's project would be preceded by a bomb revelation. The investors entered the meeting room, the animated conversations between them interrupting when McCallum took the stage. Lucas, beside him, seemed calm and ready, but his eyes were attentive to what would happen next. McCallum took a deep breath and started. "Gentlemen, today we are here to present a project that has the potential to transform the future of education and technology. But before we focus on the future, I need to approach a subject of the recent past, a subject that threatens not only our integrity, but the confidence that many of you put in me." The murmur who followed was instantaneous. Investors were anxious and at the same time restless. McCallum knew that when exposing David's betrayal, he was putting his own credibility at risk, but he also knew it was the only way to ensure that the future would move on, without internal obstacles. He looked at the audience silently for a moment and continued. "In recent days, our company has been attacked inside by someone who, until then, considered an ally. Mr. David Bradford, my longtime partner and director of operations, tried to sabotage not only the project that we are about to launch, but also undermine confidence in our team. I know many of you believe this is not possible, but the documents I have in hand prove the betrayal." McCallum paused and looked at Lucas, who, with a small nod, was ready to do his part. Lucas, with the technological skill he only had, projected on the main screen the emails and manipulated financial calculations of David. The faces in the meeting room were pale as evidence was revealed. David Bradford had tried to manipulate the market and sabotage the company for pure greed, putting everything at risk for its own personal benefit. McCallum then handed the floor to Lucas, who confidently explained the details of the project. He talked about the collaborative learning platform, the impact he would have on thousands of children around the world, and the mission of democratizing access to knowledge. Lucas's voice was firm and clear, without hesitation. He knew that this was the crucial moment, the moment when his ideas would be heard and judged by all. What we have seen today, here and now, is not just the launch of a new technology. It is the birth of something larger, something that will change the way we think about education, the future, and the generations to come. True innovation is not just from technology, but of the ability to believe in the impossible. I believe that together we can create something that will transform the world. Luke's words echoed in the room, playing all present. McCallum, when observing the investors' faces, saw that the change was happening. What was once a risky risk was now becoming a concrete possibility. They were not just seeing Lucas's project, they were seeing the future unfolding before them. But the great moment was yet to come. At the bottom of the room, the door opened abruptly. David Bradford came in with a tense countenance, but still trying to maintain the posture. He looked at McCallum and Lucas with disdain, but could no longer deny the weight of the situation. "You can't do that, Nathaniel," David said, his voice full of anger. "This will destroy everything you built. You don't know who you are moving." McCallum got up and looked at David firmly. "You don't realize, David, that's on the wrong side of the story. This project is not just about money or power. It's about something much bigger. And the truth, however difficult, is that your actions put us in a position where we can no longer trust you. There is no more room for betrayal here." David tried to approach, but investors and members of the company's security team were already observing with suspicion. The control he had exercised on McCallum was finally disappearing, and he could no longer manipulate the situation to his advantage. With the betrayal of David exposed and the launch of the project in progress, McCallum and Lucas felt for the first time that the future was within reach. The empire that McCallum had built was preserved, but he now saw things with new eyes. He was no longer just focused on power or finance. He was finally ready to embrace a true and significant change. The last piece of the puzzle had fitted, and what seemed to be a journey full of challenges and uncertainties was now a story of triumph. McCallum, alongside Lucas, knew that together they had defeated the betrayal, and in doing so, opened the doors for a future where innovation and education would be the pillars of a new era. The launch of the project was a resounding success. Investors who were once hesitant were now completely immersed in the revolutionary potential of Luke's learning platform. News about David Bradford's betrayal spread quickly, but instead of harming McCallum, This only reinforced the image of integrity and courage he had shown by exposing the truth. David was removed from the company and sued for his fraudulent actions, and McCallum was free of one of the largest internal threats he had ever faced. But McCallum's true triumph was not just about defeating David. He was in something deeper, something he had only noticed along the journey he traveled alongside Lucas. True innovation is not just about creating new products or technologies, but changing the way we see and treat people, giving them tools and freedom to be the best versions of themselves. McCallum began to realize that, before his obsession with success and control, he had neglected the importance of believing in the potential of the people around him. He had given more value to his own vision, his own authority, than to what really mattered, a genuine connection with those who could bring real changes to the world. And it was Lucas, with his unique view and his youth, who taught him to rethink all this. Lucas, in turn, was finally being recognized not only as a prodigy boy, but as a leader. The learning platform has begun to be adopted by schools and communities around the world, offering children of all sources a chance to learn and create at a previously unthinkable level. He, who was once seen as a lonely genius, was now surrounded by an army of young bright minds who, inspired by his vision, were beginning to change their own realities. While McCallum and Lucas observed the impact of the project in real time, they knew that the work was just beginning. Lucas's vision for education and social transformation was not something that was resolved in a single release or achievement. It was a continuous journey. But now, they were more prepared than ever to walk this path. In the following months, McCallum devoted more time to social and educational causes, using his fortune and influence to ensure that more children around the world had access to the opportunities Luke had created. He knew he couldn't change the world alone, but he firmly believed that with the right support he could help build a solid foundation for others to do the same. And so, what started as a simple interview with a 12-year-old boy became a revolution, not only in the technological sector but in the way the world saw the future, learning, and human potential. Lucas Bennett and Nathaniel McCallum, united by a shared vision, had not only defeated betrayal and obstacles, but also opened the doors for a future where true innovation was within everyone's reach. Months later, Lucas Bennett's learning platform was in every corner of the world, transforming education and giving voice to children who previously had no access to the tools needed to achieve their potential. McCallum, now more focused on social causes, has become a tireless defender of change and innovation. Their story, marked by overcoming and vision, has become an inspiration for thousands of young people. What started as a simple job interview became a global revolution. The future, once again, had been shaped by the courage to believe in the impossible. Now that you have known the incredible journey of Lucas and McCallum, it's time to reflect on the power to believe in the impossible. They showed us that with courage, vision, and determination, we can transform the world around us. What are you waiting for to follow your own dreams and make a difference? Share this story with others who need inspiration to face their challenges and never give up. Together we can create a future where innovation and education have no limits. The first step starts with you.